Was really pretty. Thank you, Wellberry Jam. And good morning, UUCR. Good morning. I don't get to say that often, so that was fun. My name is Malley McIntyre. My pronouns are she, her. The prompt I was given for this reflection today was to share a story about intention, change, or new beginnings. This led me to want to share with you a bit about the path that led me to UUCR about almost 3 years ago now. Not long before that, a therapist had shared something with me about 8 dimensions of wellness: physical, emotional, social, intellectual, occupational, financial, environmental, and last but not least, spiritual. I realized my spiritual bucket was really empty and had been for quite a while. I hadn't participated in the faith of my youth in nearly 20 years at that point, and nothing had filled that gap since. I was also realizing that I had been living in this area nearly 10 years and still didn't feel part of the local community. Many of the folks I knew when I first arrived had come and gone already. I don't have children, so no school or parental connections to make, for better or worse, and the isolation of the pandemic had exacerbated that feeling of disconnectedness. My father had recently passed away following a relatively short but intense battle with injuries and Alzheimer's. While he was sick, I was often balancing work, caretaking, relationships, sometimes halfway across the country, and often poorly. After my dad passed, my mom returned to her church after many years' absence, and I saw her find a lot of support there. I started looking for a local church, but those I grew up with no longer aligned with my beliefs, and it felt false and inauthentic to participate in them. The end of the year was approaching, and I really wanted to find a place where there would be a solstice celebration, because the concept of Christmas didn't resonate with me anymore, but I still wanted to celebrate that time of year. I stumbled onto UUCR online, and intrigued by this UU thing, I joined a couple Zoom sessions, since we were still in the pandemic days where gathering in person was only just starting to feel safe again. I was able to connect with some amazing staff and other newbies in a New to UU course. I was hesitant to join as a member at first because making a commitment to a faith organization is something I take really seriously. But as I made connections with folks in various groups, much love to my small group, Scenaria, Wheel of the Year, and others, much love, I felt more and more like part of this community and really at home here. So now I sometimes feel like my spiritual bucket is overflowing, and I might need to shift some more of that focus onto other dimensions, like looking at you physical health. But I'm so thankful for the joy and connections this community has brought, and I'm so glad to be a part of it, especially at this, and yes, challenging is an understatement, this challenging time when I know we'll all need each other's support all the more. But I have no doubt that we'll make it through if we continue to care for each other like I've seen everyone here do for each other in the last few years. So, thank you, UCR.
Let me start by saying I am going to confess. I have a feeling that you might identify with. Standing here with you today is a lot like pulling a pair of jeans out of the closet that you've not worn in a minute. I am feeling nervous excitement because I'm about to find out what those jeans look like. My name is Cesar Loya. I'm affiliated with 2 groups here at UUCR, Sangha and also our young adults. I encourage you to join us Thursday evenings for meditation. And as far as our young adults, please visit Realm. We have 2 upcoming events, one on campus and the other an off-site carpool. In my formative years, I remember a rotation of faces. Many women. Some of them reminded me how kind I would grow to be. Others reminded me that I was always watched for. Their blessings gave me great support, great opportunity. I did not have historical context, chronological discrepancies, looming doubts. What I did have was the recognizable example of a man that could actually receive their evangelical approval. My aunts, ladies with bold hearts, women with aspirational youth, personalities of playful diversion, told my shell of 4 years old in a most obtuse way that I was special. Other men would deceive. Other men would abuse. Other men were disposable. But I was different. I was adorned with smiles, with hugs, with moped rides, and benevolent gestures to the hanging Christ, his body, feeble and unthreatening, hung. It was never explained with responsible precision why the body of a man I did not know personally was tortured physically. I did understand this much. He had been victim to a jealousy from an actor that behaved with predation. I had also come to observe that nobody begrudged or rejected the pedestal of the Christ. There was a respect given to the martyr. There was an idol created on the wall of each Catholic home, often in the community of a dining room. His presentation incited lament and prayer. Even his critics and their satire might look away before finding their bravery. You might understand why it was comforting to be pledged with a holy corpse on its cross. Respect, you understand, is sovereign. Some time ago, I spoke to a friend on many deep and hollow subjects. In those conversations, I would learn that their childhood bullies were programmed with a different message by the same cross I birthed beside. Holy gospel, songs of spiritual perseverance were demonized to tease and taunt. The bullies would create an enemy of a vulnerable and kind-hearted soul. They would forever have proclaimed the Christian faith in poor recitation, with tainted hearts and merciless immaturity. The tragedy at base is perhaps that their rancor and their otherness are the misguided messaging that parents and homes decided to plant in the hearts of all accepting and otherwise innocent souls. Those bullies were taught a different Jesus. The value in my message is this: how much prayer are you giving to demons in your heart? Are you doom scrolling your values or your fears? Are you hiding or building? You tell me your daily ritual, and I may recognize your religion. I hope that religion is not of a polemic nature. I hope your prayers make you feel stronger. I hope they make you kinder. I hope your prayers keep you wiser. And guess what? I rehearse this act of love every day. You will remember, I am a religious person. My affinity is Buddhist. Hallmarks of my religion are entropy and acceptance. Acceptance may more lovingly understand as honest acknowledgement. The honesty is this. I lived 2 decades of my neuroplastic life under the dry palms of Southern California. I have half a decade with an adult brain in the blue crab state. My metamorphosis is not trivial. It is very intentional. I could not exist here without you. Rather, I am allowed to exist because of you. That is the entropy. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. My name's Julie Graf. My pronouns are she and hers. And I would like to tell you a story about the time my dad cooked dinner, or as I like to call it, a survivor's tale. So one morning, my sister and I overheard our parents talking, and my mom was giving very specific instructions to my dad. I have a meeting tonight, so you're going to have to cook dinner for the kids. Now, there are fish sticks in the freezer, and there's a box of macaroni and cheese in the pantry. Oh, and don't forget to put Velveeta in it, or the kids won't eat it. So my sister and I looked at each other, excited. Mac and cheese from a box for dinner? That never happened. This was huge. So later that day, my dad came home from work carrying a large package. And my sister and I asked him what it was, and he said, "Ooh, you girls are in for a treat. Venison." And my sister and I didn't know what that was. So he elaborated. Well, someone hit a deer with their truck, and they brought the carcass to work to share with everyone. And I remembered I had to cook dinner tonight, so I grabbed myself a chunk. And he was so proud of himself. Now my sister and I began to process this information. And my sister stammered, You're making us eat roadkill?" I was younger and more reactionary. "Oh no, we're gonna eat Bambi!" And I just started freaking out. So our dad tried to calm us down by commencing the butchering process. And I'm sure this is highly inaccurate, but my memories are ones of blood and gore, and my dad taking these dripping hunks of flesh and throwing them into a skillet. He then crudely chopped up some potatoes, skin still on, added massive hunks of onions, cracked a couple eggs over the skillet, and covered everything in a thick layer of ground pepper. Said no kid ever. So while our dad stood over the stove cooking roadkill for his children, my sister and I tried to reason with him. Are we eating deer because we're out of tartar sauce for the fish sticks? Because I know how Mom makes it. No. Can we have mac and cheese with Bambi? No. So eventually, my dad served us a dish he called camping hash. My sister flat out refused to eat it, but she dared me to take a bite, and I did, and I told my dad that it tasted like tires. I think this was a result of my kid logic because our dinner had been hit by a truck. Suffice to say, my sister and I had a glass of milk for dinner that night, and we were sent to our rooms, clearly in trouble for not eating the food served to us. But eventually, my mom came home. And when she found out what he had done, he was in trouble. And she made us mac and cheese from a box for dinner with extra Velveeta. Thanks.
Good morning, friends. I'm Kris Butler. Good morning. Some of you have heard this story, so I will beg your indulgence to tell it again. When my father entered hospice care almost 20 years ago, dear friends of his asked him to send them a sign once he had safely arrived in heaven. They settled on hummingbirds, which used to frequent their garden, but had been absent for years and very much missed. My father promised to see what he could do. He died in September, late in the year to hope for hummingbird sightings. And yet, 2 days after he died, not one, but 2 hummingbirds visited our friend's feeder. They took a picture of the visit, which hangs in my living room. I never paid much attention to these amazing creatures before that, but over the past 20 years, they have appeared at various times and places, often improbably, as a source of both wonderment and comfort. There have been so many moments when I ached for my dad to share an experience with me, reassure me that things would be all right, wrap me in one of his warm hugs. And in a growing list of those moments, hummingbirds have appeared. My dad and I were very close, sharing similar temperaments, interests, and outlooks on life. One of the things we most loved to do together was sing. He had a beautiful tenor voice and played guitar. He nurtured my own love of music, and as I got older, we would sing at wedding ceremonies and other events together. My confidence has not always matched my love for singing, but he unfailingly encouraged me. The first time I sang in public after he died, I performed a few songs at a friend's backyard party with another singer who also played guitar. I was a wreck. Shortly before our set, a hummingbird flew up to a hanging flower basket right next to where I was standing. A few years after that, I had a brief solo part for UUCR's production of The Armed Man's Mass for Peace. I was again a wreck. My then 8-year-old daughter noted that my knees were literally knocking together. Friends who came to the performance told me afterwards with tears in their eyes that when my solo began, a hummingbird flew up to that window. A sadness for me amidst the joy of being with my wonderful husband is that he and my dad never knew each other. They would have been good friends. The morning after our wedding in 2018, a hummingbird sipped flowers outside the window where we were having breakfast. When I moved my daughter to an island across the country a couple of years ago to serve with AmeriCorps, leaving her all on her own for the very first time, we stopped in our tracks to realize that the front door glass of the house she would be renting was etched with hummingbirds. Then real ones began visiting the feeder on the porch. She and my son just returned from El Salvador, where they visited their father's family. This was a long-delayed journey, which until fairly recently felt risky beyond our comfort level. They sent me a short video from a hike they took while they were there, and yes, there was a hummingbird on that mountain. I don't think I believe in heaven, honestly, but I do firmly believe in the endurance of love and memory and their magical, transcendent power.
Well, I come to the podium teary-eyed and also full of laughter prior to that. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Rena Geibel, she, her pronouns, and my husband Scott is here today as well. So newness. Newness is how I passed through my life. In my 20s, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I crossed many borders before owning a cell phone. And I returned to the States to an innovative high school where I taught at-risk youth in Minnesota. Newness again. I went to grad school in New Orleans where I discovered the newness of the Bayou, newness of international health classes, and where I met my fellow adventurer, Scott. In my 30s, we lived in Kenya, where we birthed and raised our 2 daughters. It was a bold celebration of living. And while in Africa, my career was my way to serve the community. I focused on reproductive health in humanitarian settings and HIV community education. And then we get to my 40s. In 2012, my youngest was 7.5 years old when they found a cancerous brain tumor in her head. Whew, all those tears. So we were medically evacuated from our home in Zambia to South Africa. This was newness. So we were contemplating having our brain surgery and all that treatment in South Africa, desperately wanting to hang on to our beautiful life. And a nurse pulled us aside. And she said, "You know, you can do treatment here. We have the technology, we have the surgeon. But going home is where you'll get your holistic care." Whew. So 10 days later, we left that South African ICU. We continued the medical evacuation to the States. So this is how I spent my early 40s, as a caretaker and trying desperately to keep a semi-normal life for my non-cancer kid. In 2015, we moved to Rockville, sort of coming out of the haze, starting to see life and being able to give to the community outside of my family. So in fact, I worked here part-time as assistant to the religious education director. And then I was able to take another breath and be able to re-enter a health-related job where I've been doing childbirth education and a birth doula, which is basically helping people have their babies, right? So I was doing that for the past 7-8 years. During this time in Rockville, we have had lots of busy calendar agendas and high school events, college applications, and lots of medical appointments for our brain tumor survivor, by the way. And somehow in this process, I hit 50 years old. And one evening at the dinner table, my husband looks around and he says, "I'm looking forward to early retirement and maybe going back to school." Now, my 2 young adult children are at the table, and they witnessed my less than positive response. Scott and I both have master's degrees, and he has a PhD. And I was angry at his words. There wasn't a morsel of support for him. So eventually, I apologized and unpacked it, and underneath all of that, I realized Scott was looking forward to something. He had his newness, but where had my newness gone? So Scott, with his savvy strokes on the keyboard and ability to look at the big picture, found a perfect way to tie my life together. Human connection, medicine, deep compassion, health education, a really strong work ethic, service. He found the perfect thing for me. So at age 53, tomorrow is my first day of being a full-time student again. And yes, I'm attending the University of Maryland School of Nursing. Yep. So on days where I'm wondering, what am I doing? And there have been some of those already. Education and technology has changed in the past 30 years. Scott's here to remind me about that South African nurse, and I hope my fellow UUCR community will remind me to embrace and find little moments of joy in this uncomfortable newness. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Karen Malley, pronouns she, her. This is quite the emotional service, isn't it? So thank you so much for listening to us. I'm going to talk to you about change a little bit. Change is a very short word. It's a tiny word. Traffic lights change. Addresses change. Our year last year was a roller coaster, a whirlwind of change. And I'm not even referring to the November election. I'm blocking that out for now. So may I share last year? In my marriage, one of us developed serious health problems, and it wasn't me. I'm fine. Because of this, we decided to move out of our beloved home and move to a retirement community before I was ready. I'm the youngest person there by at least 2 years. Okay, I can get used to that, and I had a brilliant idea along the way. We have a daughter who works at NIH. She's local, and I thought, well, maybe they want to live in our house. She loves the house. She'll be near us. We could help with her with the baby that she was about to have and did have in August. And they said yes. But hey, guys, can we move in with you before you move out? So we said, okay, sure. But oh my, we had our stuff, and they had their stuff and their dogs, and they made it 7 degrees colder. This isn't going to work, guys. We have to have it 7 degrees colder, so imagine that. So finally, after being chilled for quite a bit, we moved out, and we we warmed up, we thawed, we had to thaw. Then her baby arrived, but he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. He stayed there, a little blob of human, and then he woke up and said, hey, I'm fine, what were you all worried about? So with my husband's issues and a new grandbaby, the world was sort of shouting at me to stop working. You know, it's time to retire, Karen. So, okay, so I said goodbye to my clients that I'd had, some of whom I've had for more than 20 years. And I said goodbye to this whole bunch of very talented young people that I was mentoring. And also I said goodbye to my income, which is a thing to get used to say goodbye to that. Then the kids who had moved in with us changed their minds and moved out to be near his parents instead of her parents. Ask me how I feel about that. That everyday closeness that we had looked forward to with having them right near us was lost, was gone. I mean, they're not that far away, but it's different to be an hour or 2 away than it is to be 12 minutes away. And oh no, now we have a house to sell, which is a big thing all by itself. We have to clean out generations worth of precious things from our basement and the attic. Talk about letting go. My mother's dishes. Then I thought, oops, her mother's dishes. And then, believe it or not, her mother's dishes. All these dishes, but also things like papers in my father's familiar handwriting. I can't keep those. There's nowhere to put them. I had to let them go. Then the worst thing happened, which is technically not last year, it was early this year. Another daughter and her family who were living in Pacific Palisades, California, had to evacuate from their rental home. At least it was a rental home, but they still think their stuff is a total loss because of the infiltration of particulate matter. So they're living, they're homeless. They're living in hotels. They're trying to put their lives back together, and we're trying to help. So with this this is a roller coaster, right? This is an up and down year. There are 2 things I want to say that helped me and that I would encourage you to look for also. The first is to find your angels. People, a friend with a truck and other people, just came and carried things off for us to recycling and donation. Or people helped me when I cried or talked to me. There's a lot of change to incorporate. So to those people, I say, and some of them are here, I say to you, Rebecca in particular, but others too, You are my personal host of angels. Thank you. Everybody needs a host of angels. And so this place can be that for you as well. The second thing I want to leave you with is that helped me is my sense, an abiding sense of gratitude. I am so grateful, not just for this wonderful host of angels who I feel so loved by, but I'm grateful for this messy, painful life. Life is messy and painful, but I am so lucky. I'm so lucky. These precious things from our basement that I'm letting go of, these papers, the dishes, the whatever, these are from people who blessed me when they were here. They have blessed me with their unique presence, their beauty. People can still disappoint, life can disappoint, people can behave shockingly badly, but nevertheless, they and you and I are miracles. This life is a miracle. They make my life a miracle, and I'm so grateful. Walt Whitman wrote a poem called Miracles, which, thank you, Josh Fishbein, you pointed out to us. And he set these words to music. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same. Every foot of the interior swarms with the same. I encourage you to read the whole poem. This is what sustains me, this sense of gratitude. I am so grateful. Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm Jim Blue. My pronouns are he and him. My wife Lee and I have been members here since 1979. There are a few of us left from that time. Well, actually not here, as this building did not exist then. And for those of you on Zoom, Zoom and the internet did not exist then. And many of you in the congregation did not exist then. Back then, my hair was dark blonde, my beard was short and red, and I was taller and much better looking. Well, 45 years might make a person think, how did I get here? Why am I still here? What's my story? It goes back to New Jersey in 1971. I was working at Bell Labs. Our daughter was ready for nursery school. We had to find one. Our Jewish neighbor said that the Unitarian Church had the best nursery school, a co-op. So it was oversubscribed, but they had preference to members. That's how we became UUs. We did get involved in more than the nursery, and we liked it a lot. In 1979, we moved to Maryland for my new job with the National Bureau of Standards, now NIST, with our two children, 8 and 10. So we looked for a Unitarian congregation. The closest ones were Rockville, River Road, Cedar Lane. So we tried Rockville first. It was the closest one. So in Gathering Day in September of 1979, we found a very friendly group, welcoming, with a good choir. And we found acceptance, a feeling of community, and more warmth than we had in our New Jersey, more intellectual, uptight group. And the next Sunday, Lee was in the choir. We never got to River Road and Cedar Lane. As an illustration of the acceptance we felt, we found only about a month after we came, a member came up to me and wanted to talk privately. She and her husband had joined with another couple in a group marriage. 4 adults, 5 children, 1 house. I suppose that she thought we should know what kind of group we were joining. But nevertheless, we persisted. Lee sang in the choir for nearly 40 years, and for many years was editor of the Weekly Quest newsletter. I spent time on the Religious Education Committee, was treasurer for half a dozen years, was on the board, on the worship committee for many years. Some of you have seen me up here before. I was on search committees for 1 director of religious education and 2 ministers. And now I'm semi-retired just on the investment committee. So we've been here through thick and thin, as they say. For many ministers, several choir directors, only a couple of pianists. Couple of capital campaigns, including the one to build this building we're in now. So I'm still here. I'm not leaving. I don't get here in person as much as I would like to. I don't know a lot of you at all, but I still feel that I'm a loved and loving member of this community, and I plan to stay a member. And you are in my will. And that will help this beloved community continue and help it to continue long after I'm gone from here. Thank you.